My cousin faked a serious illness to guilt me into handing over my inheritance, then publicly praised my generosity and smirked when I called her out. This is a story about betrayal, family, and the shocking lengths someone will go to for money. Imagine your own cousin, a supposed golden child, faking a life-threatening illness. Not for sympathy, but to steal your inheritance, then daring to sue you when you expose her. That was just the beginning of my nightmare. From the moment I was old enough to remember, my cousin Clara seemed to have it out for me. She was the family's darling, pretty and spoiled. Her mother always treating her like she could do no wrong. I was the quiet one, the one expected to just take it when Clara was nasty. And believe me, she was nasty. I remember once she accidentally spilled juice all over my favorite drawing, then told my aunt I shouldn't care so much because it wasn't that good anyway. Years later, when I was 15, I saved up every penny from my first part-time job to buy a beautiful leather bag. Clara saw it, sneered that it looked too expensive for someone like you, and then simply borrowed it without asking. It came back scuffed and smelling of stale cigarettes. When I confronted her, she just laughed in my face, telling me, "You should be happy I even wore your stuff. It makes you look less cheap." By the time we were adults, I'd learned to keep my distance. But family gatherings were unavoidable. Clara would always make snide comments about my clothes, my job, even my boyfriend. She'd say things like, "Well, at least you found someone who doesn't care about appearances," right in front of him. She had a twisted talent for making insults sound like teasing. If I dared to call her out, she'd roll her eyes and retort, "Wow, you're so sensitive. No wonder people don't invite you to things." The last straw shattered after my dad passed away. He left me a modest inheritance. Not life-changing, but enough to pay off some bills and take a much-needed trip in his memory. That money felt like the last tangible piece of him, a final gift from a man I adored. A month after his funeral, Clara started acting strange. Vague, dramatic posts appeared on her social media. Some people don't know how to share, and greed is so ugly. Then came the call from my aunt, Clara's mom, claiming Clara had been diagnosed with a serious illness and her treatment was going to be astronomically expensive. Apparently, Clara had been telling everyone that I had promised to share my inheritance because family comes first. I had never promised anything. When I told my aunt this, she pressed, "But Clara's sick. Don't you think you should help?" A cold dread settled in my stomach. That's when I realized Clara was trying to use my dad's legacy as her personal piggy bank. Got worse. At a family dinner, Clara made a big theatrical speech about how grateful she was for all the support during her health crisis. Then she looked straight at me, actually thanked me for being so generous, and a smug little smirk played on her lips when she thought no one was watching. My fork froze midair. I was speechless. If I called her a liar then and there, in front of everyone, I would look like a monster, taking back help from a sick relative. Over the next few weeks, I noticed glaring inconsistencies. She was still out at clubs posting vacation pictures, buying expensive new clothes. Yet her treatment was always too private to discuss. When I directly asked her about it, that smirk reappeared. "You wouldn't understand. It's complicated. Besides, it's my personal life." Something deep inside me screamed that this wasn't right. So quietly I started digging. I called a family friend who worked at one of the local clinics Clara claimed she was attending for treatment. The friend confirmed Clara had never been a patient there. Not once. I dug deeper still, and through another mutual friend, I discovered the horrific truth. Clara had faked symptoms initially to get sympathy from her boyfriend after he caught her messaging other men. The illness had then spiraled into this elaborate lie when she saw how much attention it garnered, and more importantly, how it could be used to guilt me out of my inheritance. This was the breaking point. I had all the proof I needed. Messages from the clinic confirming her non-patient status, screenshots from her own social media showing her partying instead of resting, and even a text she'd sent a friend bragging about how she was set for the year because my little cousin is paying for my vacation. The next family gathering was my moment. Clara showed up in a brand new designer dress, acting fragile, milking every drop of sympathy. She launched into another speech about her hard times, even trying to hug me in a sickening display of gratitude. That's when I pulled out my phone. My heart hammered against my ribs. I read the text she'd sent about scamming me, then the message from the clinic. Clara's boyfriend stood up, his face a mask of disbelief. "Are you kidding me? You lied about being sick." He walked out. Clara tried to laugh it off, saying, "Wow, you really went through my private messages. That's illegal." But no one was buying it. The best part. Her boyfriend dumped her the next day, and several relatives who had given her money demanded it back. I thought it was finally over. I was so wrong. Then she sent me a smug selfie, holding a stack of papers. The caption, "See you in court." The next morning my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts from family members flooded in, asking if Clara was really suing me for defamation and emotional distress. My hands shaking, I opened my laptop to find an actual legal document demanding $50,000 in damages, plus all her supposed medical expenses that she claimed I'd promised to pay. I immediately called 3 different lawyers, but none could see me for days. So, I spent the rest of that day methodically screenshotting every single social media post Clara had made, showing her partying and shopping while supposedly sick. My aunt showed up at my door the next day, screaming that I'd ruined Clara's life, that the stress had made her condition worse, even though we both knew there was no condition. She shoved past me, started taking pictures of my living room, claiming Clara's lawyer needed proof of my assets. I told her to leave, but she just kept yelling about how I was a selfish brat who couldn't share, until my neighbor threatened to call the cops. She finally stormed out. By day 3, I was exhausted, jumping every time my phone rang, dreading more legal threats. My boyfriend came over with takeout, watching me organize all my evidence, printing the clinic's confirmation, highlighting Clara's bragging texts. He told me it would be okay, but I could see the worry in his eyes. The legal fees were already almost $2,000 just for the initial consultation. The following day brought a new problem. My bank called. Someone had tried to access my account using my social security number and mother's maiden name. They froze everything. I knew it had to be Clara or her mom, trying to get to my dad's money directly. By day 5, the quiet was almost worse. Clara was posting vague threats on social media, claiming karma was coming for people who betrayed family. She even posted a photo of herself at another law firm, captioning it, "Assembling my dream team." My stomach clenched. I could barely afford one lawyer, and she apparently had multiple. Then, on day 7, it hit like a truck. I was served with additional papers at my workplace, in front of all my coworkers. The process server loudly announced I was being sued. Everyone stared. My boss pulled me aside. Clara had also filed for a restraining order, claiming I was harassing her by exposing her medical information. The irony was sickening. My lawyer finally reviewed everything on day 8. Clara's case was mostly nonsense, she said, but I'd still have to respond to avoid a default judgment, which would cost another $3,000. Clara was trying to bleed me dry through legal fees, even if she couldn't win the actual case. It was exactly the cruel, calculating thing Clara would do. By day 10 I was running on coffee and pure anxiety, barely eating. My boyfriend stayed over most nights. I kept having nightmares about losing everything my dad left me to Clara's lies and greed. By day 12, someone was calling my work, pretending to be different reporters, asking about the lawsuit. Clara was trying to get me fired. My boss was visibly annoyed. By day 14, the quiet on Clara's end was almost worse than the chaos. She'd gone silent on social media. Her mom had stopped calling. This made me more nervous than all their threats combined because Clara never gave up, especially when money was involved. By the way, if you're still with me through this absolute nightmare, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, more unbelievable stories like this are coming. Then day 16 arrived. At 6 a.m. my doorbell rang. Through the peephole I saw 2 police officers. Clara had filed a harassment claim, accusing me of stalking and threatening her family. It was completely insane. They handed me a restraining order. It claimed I had been following her to work, leaving threatening notes on her car. All made up. Worse, she'd gotten 3 of her friends to sign statements saying they'd witnessed me harassing her. People I'd never even met. My hands shook as I read it. The police, of course, couldn't do much without solid proof. Day 18 brought more problems. Clara's lawyer sent a letter. She was suing me for defamation and emotional distress, claiming my false accusations about her fake illness had ruined her reputation and cost her her job. The lawsuit was for $200,000. $200,000. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. And definitely more than my dad's inheritance. I found out from my cousin Jake that Clara had been telling everyone at work I was mentally unstable and obsessed with her since childhood. This explained why her boss had suddenly given her paid leave. By day 20, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, reviewing every piece of evidence, while he explained that Clara's restraining order meant I couldn't even defend myself publicly without risking arrest. He pulled up Clara's social media. She was posting about being a survivor of family abuse, getting hundreds of supportive comments from people who had no idea what was actually happening. The retainer fee alone was going to eat up most of my savings. I had no choice. Clara had declared war, and I needed legal protection. Day 22. I realized Clara had been planning this for years. Subtle hints in her old messages to other family members, comments about feeling unsafe around me or my jealousy issues, even though none of it was true. She'd been laying the groundwork for this twisted narrative long before the inheritance was even a possibility. It made me wonder what else she was planning. On day 25, Clara escalated things again. She showed up at my workplace with her lawyer and 2 security guards, claiming she needed to retrieve personal property she'd left in my office. My boss called me in, confused. Clara put on a big show of being terrified, just to grab a coffee mug she'd supposedly left there months ago. The whole office watched through the glass walls as she fake cried, and her lawyer snapped photos. After they left, my boss told me I should probably work from home for a while. Clara had won another round. Day 28. Clara was throwing a support party for herself, fundraising online with a sob story about how her abusive cousin was trying to destroy her life. People were actually donating money based on complete lies. The page had raised $8,000 in 2 days. My own relatives were starting to avoid my calls. They didn't know what to believe anymore. Then day 30 arrived, and everything went completely insane. I woke up to 50 missed calls and hundreds of text messages because Clara had posted a video online that changed everything. She was sitting in what looked like a hospital bed, bandages on her arms, claiming I'd broken into her apartment and attacked her. Impossible. I'd been home all night with my roommate. The video had already been shared thousands of times, people tagging the police, demanding my arrest. Clara sobbed about how scared she was. But then I noticed something in the background on her nightstand that made my blood run cold. My dad's watch. The one that had gone missing from my apartment 2 weeks earlier. I zoomed in, took screenshots. That watch was engraved with his initials. There was no way Clara could have it unless she'd been in my apartment. My roommate confirmed it was the same watch I'd been frantically searching for. Clara had broken into my place while I was at work. By day 33, I was at the police station filing a breaking and entering report. The detective looked skeptical when I showed him the screenshots, but he added it to the report. Meanwhile, Clara had hired a PR firm that was pushing her story to every blog and news site. My name was being dragged through the mud. I started getting death threats from strangers. Day 35. My lawyer filed an emergency motion about the watch. But the court date wasn't for weeks. I couldn't eat or sleep, checking my locks obsessively. If she'd been in once, she could again. The worst part was the isolation. Even close friends started to distance themselves. Day 38 brought a small bit of hope. The detective called. They'd reviewed security footage from my apartment building and found something interesting. I rushed to the police station. The detective showed me footage of Clara entering my building with a key card she'd somehow gotten from the property manager, claiming to be my sister checking on me while I was sick. Day 45 delivered the worst news yet. Clara had gotten a temporary restraining order against me, claiming I was stalking her. even though I hadn't been within a mile of her. The order meant I couldn't attend my cousin's wedding that weekend, where half the family would be. Clara could spread whatever lies she wanted. 2 days later, I sat in my car crying after my aunt looked right through me in the grocery store. Clara had turned most of the family against me. By day 50, legal bills had eaten through half my savings. My lawyer warned me the case could drag on for months more. Then, 3 days later, Clara made her first real mistake. She posted photos on Instagram from an expensive spa weekend, captioning it about treating herself after all the stress I'd caused her. She forgot to hide the timestamp. It was during a court-ordered mediation she'd claimed she couldn't attend due to medical issues. Day 56. My lawyer used those photos to file a contempt motion. The judge was not happy. He fined Clara $1,000 and warned her any more lies would result in her case's dismissal. Clara just smirked at me across the courtroom. She had something else planned. 2 days later, a process server showed up at my work. Clara was now suing my employer, claiming I'd used company resources to harass her. The quiet dread turned into full panic. My boss called me into his office. HR was putting me on unpaid leave, pending an investigation. I hadn't done anything wrong. Day 63, I was at the unemployment office. My company had decided to keep me on leave indefinitely. By day 65, my checking account was down to $300. I had to ask my brother for a loan for rent. Killed me. I'd always been the responsible one. Day 70, Clara filed another emergency motion, claiming I was hiding assets. My lawyer needed $500 I didn't have. I pawned my dad's watch that afternoon, getting $300. It was worth more, but the pawn shop guy just shrugged. My lawyer spent day 71 drafting our response. Day 72 changed everything. Clara showed up at my apartment complex with 2 guys in suits. Private investigators she'd hired to follow me and document my spending. They stood in my parking lot, taking pictures of my 10-year-old Honda while Clara leaned against their black SUV, smirking. When I tried to go inside, she called out, "Running away won't help your case." I called the cops, but they said it was a public parking lot. The investigators followed me to the grocery store, taking notes as I put back the name brand cereal for the generic. Day 73. I woke up to find my car keyed. A note under my windshield read, "Liars always lose," in Clara's unmistakable handwriting. The police couldn't do anything without proof. My deductible was $500 I didn't have. I drove around with the scratches. Day 75. I missed my best friend's birthday dinner. I couldn't afford to split the check, too embarrassed to explain. I ate ramen on my kitchen floor, wondering how Clara had managed to flip everything so completely. Day 78 brought another legal surprise. A motion for expedited discovery, claiming time was of the essence due to her medical situation. My lawyer said fighting it would cost more than complying. So, I spent the next 2 days gathering 5 years of tax returns and credit card statements. Day 83. Clara was now suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming my false accusations had caused her severe psychological trauma, requiring intensive therapy. $50,000 more. My lawyer sighed. This would be a long, expensive fight. Day 85. Everything exploded. Clara had somehow accessed my social media accounts and posted a fake confession, saying I admitted to lying about her illness and that I was mentally unstable. By the time I saw it, 3 hours had passed. Dozens of family members had seen it, sharing it with comments about how they always knew something was off about me. I tried to delete it, but she'd changed my passwords. My phone started ringing with calls from relatives demanding explanations. My aunt left a voicemail saying I was no longer welcome at family gatherings. Day 87. I just sat in my apartment, blinds closed, trying to figure out how to prove the posts were fake. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications I was too scared to read. My brother came by with groceries, sat with me while I ugly cried. Even he seemed unsure what to believe. Day 90 finally brought the preliminary hearing. I wore my only suit, now too big from stress, and tried not to look at Clara, who arrived in a wheelchair she definitely didn't need, with a neck brace for extra effect. The judge listened for 3 hours, asking pointed questions that made Clara's lawyer sweat. Day 96. My phone rang at 6 a.m. My lawyer. Clara had filed an emergency motion claiming I'd hidden assets, attaching 3-year-old bank statements showing deposits from selling my dad's old car. She was trying to make it look like I was lying. The emergency hearing was that afternoon. Clara sat there with a smug look, wearing a new outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her lawyer held up those old bank statements like proof of a crime. My lawyer destroyed his argument in 10 minutes, showing the judge dated receipts proving the car sale happened years before my dad even got sick. The judge looked annoyed, telling Clara's lawyer to stop wasting the court's time. Day 99. Clara was now claiming emotional distress from our legal battle, wanting damages on top of the inheritance money. My lawyer laughed. Clara was getting desperate. This meant we were winning, but it also meant she might do something truly stupid. Day 105. The judge rejected Clara's emotional distress claim and warned her about filing any more baseless motions. I actually smiled for the first time in weeks. Day 108. Clara posted on social media about how family members can be so cruel, tagging several relatives, trying to turn them against me again. I screenshotted everything and sent it to my lawyer. Day 112. At a procedural hearing, Clara glared at me while her lawyer tried to argue her financial records weren't relevant to discovery requests. The judge ordered full disclosure from both sides within 2 weeks. Day 115. Everything exploded. Clara's financial records arrived, showing she'd been lying about way more than just being sick. 5 maxed-out credit cards, 2 defaulted personal loans, 3 months of unpaid rent with an eviction notice dated 2 weeks before she started her fake illness story. My lawyer's eyes went wide as she flipped through pages of debt and financial disasters. She immediately filed to have this entered as evidence, showing Clara's clear financial motive for trying to steal my inheritance. Day 118. After submitting our evidence, I sat in my car, feeling empty. This whole thing had been going on for so long. I was tired of fighting, tired of lawyers, tired of my family treating me like the bad guy. Day 121. My lawyer called. Clara's lawyer had requested a settlement conference. They knew they were losing. I told her, absolutely not. Clara had put me through hell. I wasn't letting her walk away with a penny of my dad's money. Day 124. While organizing legal documents, I noticed something strange in Clara's old bank statements from Discovery. Several large deposits right before she claimed to get sick-matched withdrawal amounts from our grandmother's account. Our grandmother, who had dementia and lived in a nursing home. My hands shook as I took pictures of every page. The amounts were huge. $5,000 here, $3,000 there. Almost $40,000 over 6 months. Called the nursing home. They put me on hold, then confirmed they'd noticed irregularities. I drove straight there with the documents. The administrator's face went white. She called their legal department. They had security footage of Clara visiting my grandmother alone on the exact dates of each withdrawal. Visitor logs showed Clara had signed in using a fake last name every single time. Day 128. Adult Protective Services called. They were opening an investigation. I spent 6 hours at their office, going through every document. The detective assigned to the elder abuse case took one look at the evidence. One of the clearest cases of financial exploitation I've seen, he said. Clara had been using my grandmother's checkbook, telling staff she was there to help with finances. Day 132. The detective called again. They'd found more victims. Clara had been doing the same thing to 3 other elderly residents at the nursing home where she'd volunteered for exactly 2 months before quitting. The detective was building a case that would result in felony charges. My lawyer was thrilled. She immediately filed a motion to inform the court about the new criminal investigation in our civil case. Day 135. I woke at 3 a.m. with a weird feeling in my chest. My grandmother called from the nursing home, confused, asking why that nice girl who used to visit hadn't come back. Broke my heart. She didn't even remember Clara was family. Day 142. I met with the prosecutor handling Clara's criminal case. She was tough. She showed me they had enough evidence to charge Clara with 4 counts of elder abuse, 3 counts of fraud, and 2 counts of identity theft. The arraignment was set for next week. Day 145. My aunt called screaming. I'd ruined Clara's life. Clara had been arrested that morning, walked out in handcuffs from her job. My aunt was sobbing. I tried to explain about the elder abuse, but she hung up. My phone immediately started blowing up with texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Day 148. Came home from work. My front door was wide open. Nothing looked stolen at first. But in my home office, every single paper related to the case was gone. My laptop, even the backup drive. Called the police. While on the phone, I noticed something else. My grandmother's old jewelry box, which I'd inherited, was empty. The officer found the window in my back bedroom jimmied open. Then my neighbor came over. She'd seen Clara's car parked on our street that afternoon. She'd even taken a picture of the car and license plate because something felt off. Day 151. It was numb. The police said Clara had an alibi from her mother. Even with the photo, they couldn't prove Clara entered my house. My lawyer said we could use it in civil court, but criminal charges for the break-in were unlikely. I sat in my empty office, trying to remember everything that had been in those stolen files. Thank God I'd uploaded scans to my lawyer's cloud storage the week before. Day 154. I changed every lock, installed security cameras. As the installer worked, I found a note Clara must have left in my kitchen. It simply said, "Drop the charges or this gets worse." Day 157. Clara's lawyer filed a countersuit against me for defamation and emotional distress, claiming I'd made up the elder abuse allegations. $200,000. My lawyer called it a desperation move. Weeks passed. Clara started showing up at my work parking lot, just sitting in her car watching me. My boss noticed, asked if I needed security. Took pictures. On day 163, I came home to find my front door wide open, muddy footprints through my living room. Nothing stolen, but someone had gone through my mail. The security camera footage showed Clara wearing a hoodie, but her car was clearly visible. The police added it to her growing file of violations. Day 178. Clara showed up at my nephew's school, claiming to be picking him up for a family emergency. The school called my sister to verify. My sister rushed over to find Clara arguing with the principal in the parking lot. Security had to escort Clara off the property. The school filed its own restraining order. My sister was shaking when she called me, saying Clara had told the secretary I was in the hospital dying. That night, I sat in my apartment with all the lights off, just thinking about how far this had gone. Clara used to be mean, but now she seemed completely out of control. My lawyer called the next morning with the trial date. Clara's criminal trial was set to start in 2 weeks. The prosecutor warned me Clara would probably try one more big move before then. Sure enough, on day 185 I got a call. Clara wanted to testify in her own defense. She was claiming she had proof I had been stalking her for years. The first day of trial, Clara showed up in a neck brace she hadn't worn before. The next day, opening statements. Her lawyer painted me as obsessed with revenge. Clara sat there dabbing her eyes with tissues, wincing every time she moved her neck. The prosecutor showed the jury Clara's social media posts from when she claimed to be bedridden, photos of her at 3 different nightclubs. Her lawyer objected 17 times in the first hour alone. I watched the jury members taking notes, 2 shaking their heads at Clara's nightclub photos. During the lunch break, Clara cornered me in the bathroom. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I just walked past her. Day 187. Witness testimony from the clinic staff. Clara had never been a patient. Clara's lawyer argued the records could be wrong, but the head nurse brought appointment logs going back 5 years. Clara cried louder. Her ex-boyfriend took the stand, describing finding the messages between Clara and other men, and how Clara had told him she had cancer to keep him from leaving. Day 188. I had to testify. My hands shook. Clara stared at me while I explained finding out about her lies. Her lawyer asked if I was jealous of Clara's success. No, I said. I just wanted my dad's inheritance. The judge had to tell Clara to stop making faces at me twice. I brought copies of every receipt showing Clara's shopping sprees. The prosecutor showed the jury Clara's credit card statements. Over $20,000 in high-end stores. Day 189. Everything turned upside down. Clara took the stand and pulled out a folder of printed emails. She claimed I had been sending her threatening messages for months, using fake email addresses. The prosecutor objected, but Clara was already reading them out loud. The emails were disturbing, talking about watching her, knowing her schedule. My stomach dropped. The jury was looking at me differently. Clara sobbed about living in fear. The judge called a recess. My lawyer pulled me aside, asking if I'd sent any emails. Absolutely not, I insisted. We needed to prove these were fake immediately. A computer expert examined the email headers. Clara's lawyer argued about chain of custody. The expert found irregularities in the metadata. Clara brought in a witness, her hairdresser, who claimed to have seen me following Clara at a mall. Under cross-examination, the hairdresser admitted Clara paid for her salon. The prosecutor showed security footage from the mall that day, with no sign of me anywhere. Day 192. More of Clara's supposed witnesses crumbled under cross-examination. One admitted Clara promised to pay their rent if they testified. Another accidentally mentioned details that hadn't been discussed yet in court. The judge warned Clara's lawyer about witness coaching. Clara kept adjusting her neck brace until it was sideways. The judge told her to fix it or remove it. Day 193. It exploded. The prosecutor's computer expert testified. The threatening emails originated from Clara's own IP address. Clara started screaming that I must have hacked her computer. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. Her lawyer asked for a mistrial, but the judge denied it. The expert showed the jury how the emails were created using Clara's laptop during times she was home alone. Clara's mother stood up in the gallery, calling the expert a liar, before court security removed her. Day 194. Character witnesses. Not the kind Clara wanted. Several of her former friends testified about her history of lying. One described how Clara faked a pregnancy in college. Another talked about Clara claiming to be robbed to get out of paying back a loan. Clara's own cousin testified that Clara had asked her to lie about seeing me at family events I didn't attend. The jury was taking fewer notes, some not even looking at Clara anymore. Day 195. Financial evidence. A forensic accountant showed Clara's spending patterns. Transfers to offshore accounts she couldn't explain. The judge allowed it as evidence of a fraud pattern. Day 196. Clara's team scrambled. They brought in a psychologist who tried to argue Clara had a compulsive lying disorder, making her not responsible for her actions. But when the prosecutor asked for Clara's medical history showing this diagnosis, there wasn't any. The psychologist admitted he'd only met Clara twice, both times after she got sued. Day 197. Disaster for Clara. The prosecutor brought up her social media posts from the days she claimed to be undergoing treatment. There she was at a beach resort drinking cocktails, posting about living her best life, while I was supposedly paying for her cancer treatment. Post after post, dated during times she said she was too sick to work. Clara tried to claim they were scheduled in advance, but the prosecutor pulled up comments where she was replying to friends in real time about the drinks and the weather. Her face went red when they showed a video she posted doing shots with friends captioned, "Chemo can wait." The judge actually shook his head. Several jury members looked disgusted. Day 198. Clara finally took the stand. It was painful to watch. She kept changing her story. First, she never claimed cancer, then she had symptoms, then she was getting preventative treatment. The prosecutor just let her talk, digging herself deeper. She tried to cry, but no tears came out. When asked about money taken from relatives, she said they were gifts. The prosecutor read texts where Clara specifically asked for money for medical bills that didn't exist. Her voice got higher and higher, trying to explain everything away. Day 200. Character witnesses. Again, not the kind Clara wanted. 3 of her ex-boyfriends testified about similar scams she'd pulled, including one who said she faked a pregnancy to get him to pay for an abortion that never happened. One ex even brought receipts showing Clara used his credit card for shopping sprees while claiming she needed money for her sick mother. By day 205, closing arguments. Clara's lawyer argued family disputes shouldn't be in court. The prosecutor's closing was brutal, laying out every lie, every fake document, every stolen dollar in a timeline that showed Clara had been planning this for months. He showed how she'd researched symptoms, created fake medical documents, and systematically targeted family members. He ended by showing a photo of my dad, reminding the jury that Clara had tried to steal an inheritance meant to honor his memory. Day 210 was verdict day. Clara showed up in a conservative suit, trying to look innocent. The jury took only 2 hours. Guilty on all counts: fraud, theft by deception, and identity theft for using my name on loan applications I discovered during the trial. Clara's mouth dropped open. She started yelling, "This is unfair. You ruined my life." The judge had to threaten her with contempt. Her mom sobbed in the gallery. Other family members just looked relieved. Day 215. Sentencing. The judge didn't hold back. He called Clara's actions a calculated campaign of deception against her own family, and her lack of remorse troubling. 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, and ordered to pay back everything she stole with interest. Clara screamed that I was destroying her future. Her lawyer argued for house arrest, but the judge said Clara had proven she couldn't be trusted in the community. Day 218. Hit me weird. I'd won, but I felt empty. Clara was going to prison, but the family was broken. Some relatives still thought I'd been too harsh. Thanksgiving was coming up, with half the family not speaking to the other. I kept thinking about my dad. What would he have thought? Day 220. Clara's mom showed up at my door, looking like she'd aged 10 years. She didn't apologize exactly, but said she finally understood what Clara had been doing, and that she'd been enabling her. She gave me a box of old family photos, including some of my dad I'd never seen. We both cried a little. Day 223. The prosecutor called. Clara had made a deal. She was going to testify about a bigger fraud ring she'd been working with, involving fake cancer patients, scamming insurance companies and families across 3 states. 3 days later, the FBI showed up at my door. I spent 6 hours going through every text, email, and photo I'd saved. The agent kept shaking his head when I showed him Clara's shopping sprees and vacation photos during her chemo treatments. Day 226. Clara was arrested at the airport, trying to flee to Mexico with a fake passport and $30,000 stolen from other victims. My phone blew up. Family members who'd given her money suddenly realized they'd been scammed too. Day 230. I sat in my therapist's office for the first time in months. I finally let myself process everything. She handed me tissues as I talked about how Clara had tried to steal not just my money, but the last gift my dad ever gave me. Day 235. I cleaned out my apartment. I found the leather bag Clara had ruined years ago, still stuffed in the back of my closet. I threw it in the trash, along with every family photo that had her smirking face in it. Day 240. The prosecutor called to prep me for testifying at Clara's federal trial. Clara had scammed over $200,000 from various people using different fake illnesses, including lupus, MS, and brain tumors. Day 245. My aunt showed up, crying, apologizing for not believing me all these years. She brought a box of my dad's things she'd been storing, including his watch and some letters he'd written me that Clara had apparently hidden. Day 250. I took that trip I'd planned in my dad's memory, to his favorite fishing spot upstate. I scattered some of his ashes there. I felt like I could finally breathe again without Clara's shadow hanging over everything. Day 255. The trial started. Clara walked into court in an orange jumpsuit, her hair flat, no makeup. She tried to catch my eye. I just stared straight ahead. The prosecutor laid out all her crimes. Identity theft, wire fraud. Day 260. I took the stand. Calmly, I told the jury everything Clara had done, from childhood through the inheritance scam. Her lawyer tried to make me look vindictive, but the evidence spoke for itself, especially when 12 other victims testified after me. Day 265. Verdict day. Guilty on all 23 counts of fraud. The judge scheduled sentencing. The prosecutor told me she was looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. Day 270. Clara's sentencing. The judge gave her 18 years in federal prison, plus ordered her to pay back every penny she'd stolen. As they led her away in handcuffs, she turned to look at me one last time. And I just smiled. Because for the first time in my life I was finally, truly free of her. Have you ever had someone close to you betray you so completely? How did you find your way back to peace? Tell me in the comments below, I really want to know what you think.